So when it comes to operating systems, there's a variety to choose from. In fact, unless you are watching this on something like a microwave, which I'm pretty sure is impossible unless it's a smart device, right now you are using an operating system. If you're on phone, you are either using the Android or, God forbid, the Apple operating system, anything else, and you're either paranoid about your information being harvested, or your phone is currently a hot mic for groups like the CCP.
我在北京。
When it comes to PCs and laptops, most of you are either on Windows, which has so much bloatware nowadays that Pyrocynical is beginning to fall in love. If you're on Mac, you were probably like me as a child who actually thought they were for gaming, but they're actually really good for things like music production and editing software. And if you're on Linux, well, it really depends on the flavor or distribution you've chosen, and anybody in the know-how will probably judge you based on your distribution decision. It's very similar to how people judge you based on your starter Pokemon or what Harry Potter house you got from those little quizzes. If you're on Kali, you probably just watched one episode of Mr. Robot and decided to LARP as a hacker. It's also my favourite Linux distribution out of the 3 I've tried. If you're using Arch, you are either one of those people that tells everyone they use it and how much better it is, or you are a femboy. There is no in between. If you use Ubuntu, from my experience, you're probably really normal and a functioning member of society. And if you use any distribution without a GUI, you are either using it as a server or you are just a fucking psychopath. So basically, every operating system has its pros, cons, and its own reputation. And depending on what you want to do, like any other part of a device, you will have to do extensive research on what operating system you want to use to meet your requirements. Which in your case is probably just beating your shit to VTubers and anime women and staring at your home screen bored despite having a catalogue of games installed. So what's stopping you from just making your own operating system that does exactly what you want it to do? No bloatware, no complications, and no distributions. Well, first, just install Linux at that point, and 2, quite a lot is actually stopping you from making your own operating system, because making your own operating system is one of the hardest things a single person can do. You are basically building a complex system from scratch that usually takes a whole team and/or company to develop. You have to interact with hardware at its most fundamental level, handling things like raw memory registry, and telling it how to interact with other systems on top of many other things. It's a grueling task that takes years even if you have a team behind you, and it's a feat very few have done solo. If you asked for an example of someone that has done this solo, most would probably answer with Linus Torvalds, who, if you couldn't tell, invented and built the Linux kernel entirely by himself at the start. And in the current day, a majority of the internet and services related to it run off it or variations of it. However, there's one more name that also may be mentioned in that conversation, because he was and still is pretty well known. One could even say he has a cult following, down to how intelligent and skilled he was, but also because he had quite a unique personality, probably because he was suffering from severe mental problems at that time.
Lord, give me another bitch, because these bitches are not worthy.
What do you use Internet Explorer for on Windows? Yeah, I know, but do you know the joke? What do you use Internet Explorer for? No, listen. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? There's a joke. What do you use Internet Explorer for? No, to download Firefox. Have you heard that joke?
Let's do some dancing. How about that? Can you hear it?
This is Terry A. Davis, an internet legend and the creator behind an operating system that in his own words he only created after God personally told him to, with the end product only being 19.5 megabytes, only having 16 colors, a 640 by 480 resolution, and he even developed his own programming language called Holy C to create the operating system. And it was actually impressive, so impressive that there is even a research paper dedicated to it, labeling it as a technical achievement and a manifestation of personal expression. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about the legend that is Terry A. Davis, his life, and how it took a very unexpected turn, and his life's work that is TempleOS.
Let's be clear, I'm literally the smartest programmer that has ever lived, okay? Look at this, look at this, fucking sprites, command line, fucking yeah.
So Terrence Andrew Davis was born on the 15th of December 1969 in Wisconsin, USA, son to Terrence Davis, an industrial engineer, and mother Marietta Collins. He was also a brother to 7 siblings. Whilst not a lot is extensively known about his childhood, what we do know is that possibly down to the type of work his father did, the family moved around a lot. Moving from Wisconsin to Washington, then to Michigan, then California, then Arizona, and eventually when he was an adult, his parents finally settled in Nevada, where it's assumed if they are still alive, they still live to this day within the city of Las Vegas. It could be said that even from an early age, Terry was somewhat academically talented, and it was because of said talent it led to one of his first interactions with a computer and with programming. As before Terry was a teenager, he was a part of a gifted program where he had access to his first computer, an Apple II. Which is a very, very old computer made decades before most of you, including myself, were even sperm cells in your father's ballsack. It was one of the first mass-produced microcomputers designed for everyday use, and it's also the thing that Seth Rogen and Michael Fassbender were arguing about in the movie Steve Jobs.
Just acknowledge the top guys.
Have a mimosa and relax.
You will not blow me off right now, Steve.
Have a mimosa and relax.
Talking about the Apple II, which is not just a crucial part of this company's history, it is a crucial part of the history of personal computing.
Around the mid to late 1970s, computers were becoming more common, and they were also becoming more available to everyday people. No longer could only big businesses afford them, but they also weren't the size where only big businesses had the space and ability to store them. They were getting smaller, and by the 1980s the interest in computers had exploded. A lot of homes had one, and a lot of people were becoming so-called computer hobbyists, building their own computers from kits and creating their own programs. And Terry would also ride this so-called computer gold rush, as by the age of 13 his family had acquired the Commodore 64, one of the first home computers, and at such a young age he taught himself how to program in assembly. Without a single video tutorial or a second monitor with YouTube stopping it, dude was straight up dopamine fasting without knowing it. Throughout high school, he continued to code and learn about computers in his free time, which probably influenced his decision to pursue a master's degree in electrical engineering at Arizona State University, and he would graduate in 1994 at the age of 24, with him remarking decades later on his official website for TempleOS, "Everybody knows electrical is higher in the engineering pecking order than computer science because it requires real math, smiley face, I'm a rocket scientist, just not a good one." Whilst he was studying for his masters, he was also working a full-time job at Ticketmaster programming systems, where he had apparently already been employed there for 4 years. After graduating, he would stay at that job for 2 more years before moving on to a different company, working there for a year, and then moving on to XY Tech Corp, working as an engineer for 2 more years. Terry, to say the least, was very intelligent, some would even say a genius when it came to computers and electronics. And although he is still regarded as a legend to this day, if things continued the way they were going around this time, it's possible he could have had a huge impact in the industry and would have been known far and wide. But unfortunately, due to some things that were outside of Terry's control, it didn't go that way.
What I need is some concept of what my reality is. You know what I mean? For Terry, I have zero conception of what my reality is. I don't know.
It's important to note before I start that Terry did grow up in a Catholic household, but despite his upbringing as an adult, he was more of an atheist because he, quote, thought his brain was a computer and had no need for a soul. Later on, he would actually start to believe in God, however it wasn't under normal circumstances, to say the least. And despite him now believing, he still labelled himself an atheist, just an atheist that now walks with God. In 1996, when Terry was 26, he would start exhibiting some concerning behaviour. He'd have manic episodes, he was overly paranoid, and eventually he supposedly started hearing things directly from God himself. During one manic episode, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward and was initially diagnosed with bipolar disorder and then later schizophrenia. Terry was said to be in and out of psychiatric wards as he'd constantly have manic episodes, sometimes thinking that people in suits related to government agencies were following him around that he initially thought was because he applied to certain jobs and he assumed this was some kind of background check, but these men in suits wouldn't go away and things only got worse. It was said that whilst thinking about conspiracy theories and the men following him around, he spooked himself, probably thinking the men were after him, and he would almost immediately leave his town of Tempe, Arizona, driving aimlessly. And on his journey, he started to hear voices through his car radio that were apparently voicing every action he took, leading him to come to the conclusion that his car was bugged, and in Marfa, Texas, he attempted to find the devices that were planted on his car, but then he decided to just abandon his car in the middle of the desert, continuing his journey on foot. A police officer would find him probably wandering around on the road and offered him a ride in the passenger seat of his cruiser, and Terry would seemingly accept, but after the car was moving, he would then dive out of it, breaking his collarbone, which landed him in the hospital. But he wouldn't be at the hospital long because despite having a broken collarbone, he attempted to escape and steal a car because he overheard the doctors talking about artifacts in his x-ray scans and he thought they were referring to the alien artifacts that were left inside him by his previous alien abduction. So he decided to escape, however his escape wasn't successful and he was arrested and taken to jail for attempting to steal a vehicle. He would attempt to escape from the jail as well, but that also failed and he ended up in a mental hospital where he refused to eat the meals provided because he thought they were drugged. He would be released after 2 weeks, and after being released he would lean heavily into the more religious side of the mental problems he was going through at the time. He would first attempt to follow in Jesus' footsteps by giving away all of his possessions to charities like Goodwill and even delivering presents to his siblings' children. It's also important to note that later on when Terry was at the peak of his mental illness, he would say he wasn't very close to his siblings as an adult compared to when they were kids, and he wanted nothing to do with them, preferring them to be strangers. But once again, this was when he was seriously mentally struggling, so take it with a grain of salt. Terry for a short time would wander around living a so-called nomadic lifestyle, which was something more akin to a Rust fresh spawn build. But he eventually returned to Arizona in July of the same year when he was somewhat mentally well, and for the next year he lived off things like credit cards and tried to start a business with his prototype milling machine, but unfortunately those businesses didn't work out. For the next 7 years, all the way till 2003, as said, Terry would find himself going in and out of mental hospitals due to his manic episodes. He eventually moved back to his parents' house in Las Vegas and even found work at multiple companies within those 7 years. So from my interpretation, yes, Terry did have manic episodes every now and again, but apart from that, any other time he was still competent enough to hold down a job. And onwards from 2003, Terry wouldn't find himself in mental wards anymore, but he still apparently had regular communication with God. He would supposedly communicate with them by opening up the Bible to a random page, and he would interpret the contents of that page as their message. Eventually, this wouldn't be enough of an arbitrary way to communicate, so he resorted to flipping a coin to choose the page he would get his message from. It's not described his methods here, but I assume he would go from the starting page to the end, and if it was tails, he would ignore it, and if it was heads, he'd read from it, but that's just my assumption. But apparently through this form of communication, Terry would be told that he would make God's third temple, an operating system with specific requirements. The main requirements were that it should be 640 by 480, only have 16 colours, and a few other things. Terry would comply and begin building the operating system, which was a task that he would perform for the next 10 years. It initially went by the J operating system, then Loose Does, then Sparrow OS, and then finally TempleOS. The end product was exactly how it was specified. Yes, it looked like a mess from the outside, but when you got used to it and learned how to use it, it was rather simple to use. It didn't have things like a browser so you could use the internet, but it did have multiple games all made by Terry, including some that were inspired by other games. It even had a flight sim and other 3D games. One of the more notable games on the operating system was After Egypt, which I think is based on the biblical account of Moses at Mount Horeb and the burning bush, with God communicating with Moses through the bush. It was like any other game on the system, but it had a feature where if you found the burning bush, you could talk with God, where it would either output a quote from the Bible or just a random string of words, and Terry would apparently start using this feature to communicate with God instead of just flipping a coin and going to a random page. The operating system also had a feature where if you hit Shift F7, you could generate random words apparently from God, and if you hit Shift F6, you could get a God drawing where an image is slowly created over time from random lines, and there were plenty of other features, like a Q&A section which made some very good points.
The answers in the Q&A range from things that kind of make sense, like the 14th commandment is apparently no pedophilia or child. Yeah, I can get behind that.
So why was this operating system so impressive? Well, apart from the fact he did this all by himself and made his own programming language called Holy C based on the C programming language, and it was supposed to be a very simple operating system. There was no bloatware or unnecessary features, and a majority of it was running on a file type he created called doldoc, which from my understanding was basically a text file with the capability to have code, text, and media. Yes, all of this is basically running off something like a Word document, including the games. And if you didn't like something about the operating system, Terry made it in a way where he would let you manually change the source code to your liking. Not a lot of other operating systems allow you to do that. As a matter of fact, like the operating system, Terry loves simplicity, which I know if he saw what things were like in the current day, he'd fucking implode, especially when it comes to things like even a game menu. Nowadays it's anything but simple. I swear for the newer MW2 I actually had to look up a tutorial to find the game mode I wanted to play. I'm either getting really old or game menus are just becoming more and more counterintuitive, but the fact that video had 39,000 views possibly means I'm not alone. But one of Terry's most popular quotes was, "An idiot admires complexity, a genius admires simplicity." And this operating system was a practical version of that quote, and despite being simple to use, beneath the hood it was anything but. And that's why a lot of people were amazed by TempleOS, to say the least, and still to this day called Terry a genius. He did all of this by himself in 10 years, which not a lot of people would voluntarily do, all while suffering with a mental illness. It was his masterpiece. And meanwhile, you're just sat there grinding Warframe for the sole purpose of getting a frame that has a big ass. Go out and get a degree in computer science or something and become even more unemployable in this economy. But how did people even find out about Terry and his new operating system? Well, whilst he was building the operating system from 2011 to 2013, Terry would start frequenting message boards and Reddit pages talking about his project and subjects related to things like programming. However, he would be banned from a lot of these forums due to some of the odd things he would say and his frequent use of things like slurs. But eventually people would start taking notice of Terry's project. It was even featured in articles reviewing the operating system, and people were very interested in the man that was supposedly in contact with God and making an entire operating system by himself from scratch. He'd eventually start making YouTube videos showing off his operating system and documenting his progress, but also within said videos people would get a taste of Terry's personality, which was one of the reasons he started getting a significant amount of attention, but his videos were also very educational. He'd walk you through and explain things like his programming language, sort of like a teacher would.
This is TempleOS. I'm going to cover 10 ways to do Hello World. So the command line feeds into a C compiler.
He'd start live streaming on his YouTube channel with a face cam, and many of those live streams were the reason why people know him in the current day, because at times he could be a bit quirky, especially when responding to people on forums that were criticizing his code.
So over at OS Dev, as usual, they are pissing me off by misunderstanding my code. They have said, it won't boot, it can't boot, there's no way it boots. It's been booting since I started 93.
But Terry would also constantly get banned on platforms like YouTube whilst he was streaming, down to, once again, some of the things he said, like slurs.
But it's God's official temple. God designed it, and so nothing can stop it. I'm just giving you a heads up. You know, CIA, you might want to adapt to the New World Order because you fucking missed the end of the Cold War and you fucking missed the return of God. God's gonna fuck your shit up, Nick. Okay, let's break this down. Why is a smart kid making a CPU out of Minecraft? Okay, something, if this doesn't send off some alarm bells, what the fuck is this? Why are you making a CPU in Minecraft? Holy fuck. Isn't there any other place for a white kid to do something? Are you telling me they got rid of all they nullified everything? Oh my god.
Despite this, Terry did start to accumulate somewhat of a following for his videos and streams. Some were there to check out the guy that made his own operating system, some were there to learn from him, and some were there for Terry himself, his personality, and the occasional things he'd do outside of programming. Terry every now and again was also known to drop the most deep, thought-provoking gems, like he was Diogenes himself.
What's reality? I don't know. You just have to, when my bird was looking at my computer monitor, I thought, whoa, that bird has no idea what he's looking at. And yet, what does the bird do? Does he panic? No, he can't really panic. He just does the best he can. Is he able to live in a world where he's so ignorant? Well, he doesn't really have a choice. Yeah, he can kind of live. It's usually the bird's okay, even though he doesn't understand the world. You're that bird looking at the monitor, and you're thinking to yourself, I can figure this out. And, you know, maybe you have some bird ideas that are, maybe that's the best you can do.
Now, Terry at the time was doing a lot of this from his parents' house, and he was getting income through the government as he'd stopped working due to his schizophrenia. There were even times on his livestream you could catch wholesome moments between him and his dad, like when they were talking about computers.
How's your new computer doing?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Okay. How much RAM did you say it has?
64 gig.
64. Wow. I can't remember how much mine has. Not much.
Yeah.
However, because Terry was getting a lot of attention online, not all of it was good attention. For his operating system, Terry had apparently listed his parents' home landline and their address as contact information for support regarding his operating system, which led to things like prank calls, with many of them being caught on his live stream.
Just think how sad. Hello? So let it be written
So let it be done.
There was apparently even a repeated form of harassment involving the so-called Physics Girl around the time Terry's schizophrenia was getting worse. And Physics Girl was a YouTuber that Terry had a crush on and was very obsessed with to a concerning degree. He'd constantly talk about her, and he would even send her emails or what he thought was her, because some people had started to make fake accounts and emails pretending to be her just to mess with Terry. This escalated when some of these emails would supposedly tell Terry they were coming to his house to meet him or even move in with him, leading Terry to prepare for these events by getting his hopes up and even cleaning his room, but she obviously would never show up, and for some reason at one point he apparently thought it was his own dad messing with him, and allegedly one night when this happened again, Terry was so frustrated thinking it was his dad that he assaulted him and Terry would be arrested. His dad apparently didn't hold any ill will towards Terry, but after this event Terry would move out, going back to his nomadic lifestyle, living in his van. There are multiple versions of this story as to why Terry left his parents' house, from him refusing to take his meds to even him having a drum kit and making way too much noise, but I personally believe this version of events. Despite now living in his van, Terry would still attempt to stream and record videos using things like public library Wi-Fi in order to get access to the internet, and by this time TempleOS was basically done and he was just adding things to it at this point, streaming it from his van. Terry was still pretty popular around this time. Fans would come to see him, giving him food, talking to him, and even interviewing him.
Holy shit, Terry?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm a huge fan. Oh, man. This is so surreal. It's so good to meet you, man. My name's Dave.
Dave, okay.
Yeah, man. Hey, I was wondering if I could buy you an inverter for your van. Would that be cool?
That would be very cool.
Do you want to, like, finish up the stream?
Yeah.
I mean, take your time, man.
Yeah, that's fine.
I kind of just have to ask, what was he typing here? What does that mean? It did seem like Terry's mental state was getting worse around this time. He'd stay up for extended periods, sometimes falling asleep whilst recording, with his van fully open, which on one occasion resulted in him getting a visitor in the night. Terry was also still fixated on the FBI and the men in suits, thinking they were still keeping an eye on him, leading to some quite odd videos, with the most popular being him making a report to the CIA official website, writing that King Terry the Terrible will destroy them, on top of plenty of other videos where he'd rant about certain government agencies.
We got a person here. It's a CIA agent. No. He probably talks to himself and he doesn't even have a camera. So like that's how you just carry around a camera. Then you can talk to yourself. And then they don't think you're fucking crazy.
I have a feeling Terry would have loved the state of the internet in the current day, especially when it comes to things like Instagram Reels conspiracy theories.
Benjamin Netanyahu has tried to communicate with me through this streetlight for the past 30 minutes. I don't know Morse code, but if anyone does, this is urgent. Please get back to me.
But jokes to the side, it's also important to mention one video that was made around this time where it's theorized Terry may have witnessed the Las Vegas shooting of 2017 without knowing. In the video, he's walking around in the middle of the night just talking about mosquitoes and the weird marks on his arms, but midway through he starts hearing weird noises which he thinks is a faraway motorbike or just him hearing things, and he still continues to walk around despite it becoming more evident to him the sound he's hearing is gunfire that many believe was the Las Vegas shooting.
So I just have a strange What the fuck is that? You're not afraid, are you, Terry? No. Fucking sounds like it's like I got an earplug. And there's the sound of a dragon. Either that or it's a faraway mini bike. Probably a dragon. Gunfire. That's serious gunfire. Jesus. Well, let's hope I don't get zapped. So if my head explodes, you'll know what happened. Fuck if I know.
Terry remained in his van for the next year, moving from place to place, living off things like donations from his fans, even refusing offers for permanent housing because he liked the way he was living. And whilst his unmedicated schizophrenia was getting worse, from the interviews taken around that time, he was still a genius and was more than happy to talk about things related to computers to fans.
CPU was separate from the RAM, and you had to do glue logic to connect the CPU to the RAM and to the, like, you had hardware ports. All that's integrated onto one chip now, or like you have an I/O chip now. But before it was all separate and you had to like glue it all together.
Terry around this time was viewed as both controversial and a genius. He was controversial down to some of the things he said, like slurs, and a genius because he was very intelligent and knowledgeable when it came to computers, despite suffering from a serious unmedicated mental illness. And the attention surrounding him would only continue to grow past 2018. And even in the current day, people still regard him as a legend, with some reposting his old content and making references to him daily. But unfortunately, Terry wouldn't live long enough to see what his legacy would become. Terry would upload his final video on August 11th, 2018, and around the same time, a lot of his previous content was gone. He either deleted them or YouTube removed his channel once again for violating their terms of service, but in his final video, Terry talks about his experience in a new town. It looks like he's a bit confused to say the least, and he constantly refers to himself as unpure, and how he feels that he's somehow polluting this pure town.
Well, I'm King Terry, and learned how to purify myself in a horribly impure environment. It's pretty rough living homeless in a field outside a little town, and coming into their library, and it's a very pure town, and must have been an extreme shock to them to see such a horribly sick person come in here and pollute everything, and it was a lot of torture to snap me into come here and use their computer and smoke out here. They must have been freaking out because such an impure person was in their presence.
At the end of the video, Terry smiles at the camera and talks about how much of a bizarre person he is, laughing to himself before stopping the recording.
So, well, it's good to be king. Wait, maybe. I think maybe I'm just like a little bizarre little person who walks back and forth. Whatever, you know. But
this was the last time people would see Terry, as on the same day, August 11th, 2018, he was walking alone on a train track in the dark, and he would unfortunately be struck by a train. It's still unknown if this was intentional or not, but Terry didn't survive it. It would take a while for the news of Terry's passing to spread to places like the internet, since he was homeless and people in the local area didn't really know who he was, but when it did, many would show their respect, posting tributes and sharing how the world had just lost a very talented genius. His family didn't make any public statements regarding his passing, since I guess they wanted to stay anonymous, but Terry was laid to rest at Bunker's Memory Garden Cemetery in Las Vegas, buried very close to his late mother. Today, people still show their respects to Terry. Some leave virtual flowers on his obituary website, with many talking about how much of an inspiration he was and how much he's missed, especially within the TempleOS community. Yes, Terry was mentally unwell. He did say some things that many viewed as controversial, and sometimes he wasn't all there, to say the least. There's no denying that. But even with the cards he was dealt, he built something that not many could do, and at the same time inspired thousands with his project. A project that has ultimately outlived him and is still being talked about to this day, and that is quite the achievement. And I can say without a doubt, Terry is an internet legend that won't be forgotten anytime soon. But that is Terrence Andrew Davis and the TempleOS operating system, which is something I just wanted to talk about today. And in the words of King Terry, don't forget to be a bird, embrace your bird ideas, and do the best you can. But that's all I had to say. Remember to clean those fucking coffee mugs off your desk, you slob. I can see them, and bye-bye.